everyone. This is John Daly. I'm here again with Bernie Goldberg for another episode of the No BS Zone. How's it going today, Bernie?
Very good, John. How about you?
Great. I'm doing good, thank you. So today we're going to be talking about some topics you and I have been writing about lately, starting with a column I put out last week. The title of that column was Mental Impairment versus Mental Derangement. And I argue that if we end up getting Biden versus Trump again in 2024, which seems very likely at this point, that's how persuadable voters will view their choices. Bernie, you said you liked the column, you wanted to talk about it a little bit this week. So I was curious what it was about that piece that resonated with you or that stuck out for you.
Well, the choice between a mentally impaired and a mentally deranged candidate right there is interesting. Uh, Most Americans don't think Joe Biden is mentally fit to run again and be president for 4 more years. Okay. Yet, if he wins the nomination, Democrats are going to vote for Joe Biden, no matter who the Republican nominee is, and especially if Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. So they'd rather, well, instead of saying what I think, I'll quote from your column. Simply put, most Americans would rather have a mentally impaired president than a mentally deranged one. Everything else, including policies, is largely an afterthought. I don't know. I just find it interesting that on the one hand, you have a president that's mentally impaired and his party will still vote for him. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who's chronically dishonest, a clinical narcissist, a sociopath. If you go through the list of things that constitute a sociopath, and most Republicans will vote for him rather than Joe Biden because they won't vote for any Democrat. As long as Trump is the leading GOP candidate, this is something important, I think. Biden gets away with being mentally unfit for office because Trump draws all the attention, and this is exactly what Democrats want.
Right, and I cited the recent NBC poll in my column showing that 68% of Americans say they are majorly or moderately concerned that Joe Biden does not have the necessary mental and physical health to be president. That same poll shows Biden still beating Trump by 4 points. They show Ron DeSantis about even, but what's the difference there is everybody can see. You know, I mentioned this in the column too. I don't think anybody, even diehard Biden supporters, are blind to the degradation we've seen from Biden since he took office. He that was obviously concerned even before he took office, but we see it every day. We see him slowing down. We see him getting his words jumbled. He's what he's trying to say isn't always apparent. Um, at the same time, when someone looks at Biden, they don't believe for a second that he would do something like try to overturn US democracy or try to overturn an election. They don't expect him to provoke an insurrection. They don't think he would ever praise people who carried out violence in his name or praise people that said they wanted to hang his vice president. That's the difference I see between the mental impairment and the mental derangement. And it stinks that these two, are giving, this is very likely going to be our choices. I don't want to say it's definitely going to happen, but it's definitely where the money's at right now. And when I write columns like this, I always get pushback from Trump supporters who say, no, there's no way. People see Biden this way. Nobody's going to vote for him. They're going to vote for Trump. And the reason for that, Trump supporters have been rationalizing and defending Trump's derangement, and I have no problem calling it that, for so long that it's second nature to them at this point. It's no longer outrageous to them. I think even when he ran the first time, a lot of people were hesitant to support Trump because of what they saw as just this crazy stuff that he was doing all the times. But after all these years and after all this rationalizing, a lot of Trump supporters, they just see this as normal politics. And but it does remain, what they don't understand, it does remain outrageous to most Americans, and that's something I wish people would get. If they did, I would like to think Trump wouldn't be doing so well in the polls right now, but he's still up above 50%. And that's kind of disheartening for people like me.
There are two kinds of Trump supporters. The diehard Trump supporters who really, and this is not an exaggeration, really would not abandon him even if he did shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. By the way, I mean that literally. I, I think people think, well, of course, if he shot somebody on Fifth Avenue, no, they wouldn't abandon him anyway. And the other Trump supporters are people that I speak to, and they say, I'd rather Trump not run. I'd rather one of the other candidates get the nomination. And then they always add, but if it's Trump versus Biden, I'm voting for Donald Trump. So they'd rather vote for somebody like Donald Trump over somebody they think is mentally unfit for office. But on the other side, they'd rather vote for somebody who even Democrats think is mentally unfit for office than vote for Donald Trump. So this raises a question for me. Who is less qualified to be president of the United States of America, Biden or Trump? Both, I want to be kind, both have mental health issues. What the hell is going on in this country where these are our choices? Now, it's a long way between today and Election Day 2024. Voters, and I think you concluded in your column, John, voters still have a lot of power. On the Republican side, they have a wide array of choices. Not so much on the Democratic side. But it's not automatic that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee, nor is it automatic that Donald Trump will be the nominee. I think it's likely, though, and one reason is that Joe Biden and Donald Trump, like a lot of other politicians, don't care what the voters think. They don't care that most voters would rather see two other candidates run. And that's because I think they not only don't care, I think they're selfish. I think their ego is such that they want to run, and if most Americans don't want them to run, that's somebody else's problem. I just, it's very discouraging. Let me just end with that. It's very discouraging that in a great country like the United States of America, with so many qualified people, we may end up with a rematch of 2020.
No, no, I think that's true. And we talked a little bit about sort of off the air, an analogy that you had when you were talking about the reason, Biden is still going, and you had a historical analogy that you talked about regarding Nixon about something that went on
Yeah,
within the Republican Party many years ago that you would like to see happen again. Can you explain that to people?
yeah, I'm writing a piece that will go up on the website, will go live Monday morning. On August 7th, 1974, while Watergate was closing in on Richard Nixon, Barry Goldwater and the Republican leaders of the House and the Senate went to the White House and told Richard Nixon that they didn't ask him to resign, which is a myth. People think they did. But they told him that impeachment was all but certain if he stayed in office. One day later, one day later, Nixon resigned, and one day after that, he left the presidency. Now, this got me thinking, who has the gravitas of Barry Goldwater today on either the Democratic side or the Republican side to tell either Joe Biden or Donald Trump, don't run again for the sake of the country? I don't know anybody on the Democratic side who will say that to a sitting president. And on the Republican side, I can think of a few people. Chris Christie would say, Mr. President, Mr. Former President, you're not fit for office. You shouldn't run. Mitt Romney would say it, Liz Cheney would say it, but they couldn't get past the front gate at Mar-a-Lago. So I can't think of any Democrat with the gravitas of Barry Goldwater who told Nixon, basically, for the sake of the country, it's time to go. Basically, he said that, not in so many words. And I can't think of any Republican who can get to Mar-a-Lago who Donald Trump would agree to see at Mar-a-Lago, who would tell him that. All the others, profiles in courage are hard to come by. I understand that. But man, profiles in cowardice, as I've said, they're a dime a dozen.
Yeah, that's true. And it's some of these polls have been showing that 95% of Americans do not want this rematch. They don't want a rematch of 2020. And the two people that want this the most are Biden and Trump. And
Exactly.
um, yeah, I mean it's true. There really is no objective, stand back. I get why they're doing it. They think it's an ego thing, like you said. I think additionally with Trump, I think he hopes that'll get him out of some legal trouble as well. I think that's why he jumped in as early as he did, so he can. I, his lawyers have been sort of upfront too. I've seen some columns lately where they believe that the best way for him out of these legal troubles is to become president. I thought that was sort of an interesting. I mean, I should include that column in the show notes because I thought that was sort of an interesting addition.
What I said the last time we did this is that if he runs, if he wins, if he gets elected, and he's in the Oval Office, he'll pardon himself. That
Yeah,
I am convinced of.
no, I think that's true. And so, along those lines, along the point about the legal issues that Trump has, something I thought was sort of interesting. Jonah Goldberg wrote the other day. Well, he's been writing about this for a few weeks, but he sees one of the best things that Biden can do for his legacy, as he sees as a one-term president, is to actually cut a deal with Donald Trump to pardon Trump from the crimes that he's currently in hot water over, in exchange for Trump ending his presidential run, with then Biden on top of that ending his own reelection run and basically throwing the race out to other people in the party. To be clear, Jonah doesn't think that's going to happen, but he sees that would be a great move for the country as he sees it. That would really put our nation's interests ahead of the interests of these two people. What do you think about that?
Let me agree on 2 points. It would be a great thing, and there's no way that's going to happen.
No, I agree.
By the way, let me go on. When I said that there's nobody with the gravitas in either party, uh, at least on the Republican side, who can get past the front gate of Mar-a-Lago, who would tell Trump not to run or who would tell Biden not to run. Let me give you a few examples of. I don't want to make it sound like a cheap shot that we're saying Biden is mentally unfit for office, or even that most Americans say it. Let me give you a few examples. Biden has said that Russia is at war with Iraq. No. He told an environmentalist group that, quote, we have plans to build a railroad from the Pacific all the way across the Indian Ocean. Think about that. A railroad from Los Angeles on the West Coast to the Indian Ocean. I mean,
Oh yeah,
he has
oh
often
yeah.
said
Everybody sees this. Yeah.
he has often said that his son Bo died in Iraq. His son Bo died in Bethesda, Maryland. In 2022, during his State of the Union message, he said, quote, Putin may circle Kiev with tanks, but he will never gain the hearts and soul of the Iranian people. So once he thought Russia was at war with Iraq, now he thinks they're at war with Iran. Okay, that's 0 for 2. At another event, he asked, where's Jackie? This is a congresswoman from Indiana. Where's Jackie Walorski? Well, Jackie Walorski was dead, which was bad enough. But 2 weeks earlier, Trump mentioned that she was dead. He commemorated her death just weeks earlier. And then, of course, there's his famous closing argument at the University of Hartford after he made a speech that said, for no known reason, God save the Queen, man. So, so the American people have every reason to think Joe Biden is not. By the way, He's 80, he's going to be 82 on election day, 86 when he leaves. Who thinks he's going to get sharper as he gets older? Is there anyone who thinks that? And yet, this gets back to the point of your earlier in our discussion. And yet, Democrats would rather have him than any Republican, especially any Republican named Donald Trump. And on the other side, Republicans would rather have Donald Trump than any Democrat. You know, look, I know that Republicans aren't going to switch over and vote for Joe Biden, and Democrats aren't going to switch over and vote for Donald Trump. But the idea that these are our choices, these are our
No,
choices.
no,
Again,
it's
I'm repeating myself, but I find this very depressing.
yeah, no, I pointed out, so if Biden were to win a second term, he would be president until the age of 86, to the age of 86. That's actually about 10 years past the average life expectancy of Americans. This isn't anything to jump on people just on the age issue alone. I mean, we all grow older, of course, but it really is about, fitness for the presidency. It's just, there are some people at 86 that are pretty sharp, I would say. But all of us, we go through some degradation as we grow older, and it's just we see what he is now, and then we think, 6 years from now, what's it going to be like?
And yet, most Americans know this, not just most Democrats, including a large percentage of Democrats. And Joe Biden doesn't care. And on the other side, most Americans don't want Donald Trump to run. Donald Trump doesn't care. Such is their ego, and such, I believe, is their selfishness. And the only people who could make this not happen are the voters in the primaries. And yet, it doesn't look like any. I'm stuttering because I want it to be different, and my mind is telling me, don't come off as naive. Don't come off thinking Nikki Haley's going to win the nomination, or Tim Scott, or Vivek Ramaswamy. It's not going to happen. And let's not be naive and think that Gavin Newsom is going to suddenly say, I'm running against Joe Biden, which would be very interesting if he did. I think what we see is what we're going to get, and I hope I'm dead wrong on that.
No, I hope so too. But what's depressing to me too, and I mentioned this a little bit the other day to you, but Tim Carney from the Washington Examiner, he was down in Iowa talking to Republican voters. He asked a number of people in Iowa, about who they plan to vote for, and he was really taken back. I mean, we see the polls are probably a little more competitive than this would show, but just anecdotally, I guess when he was talking to people, he was taken back by how many people ruled out ever voting for Mike Pence or Ron DeSantis, not Trump, but those two, because they viewed both of these men as disloyal to Trump. Pence being disloyal for not overturning the 2020 election, and DeSantis, I guess, for having the gall to run against Trump after Trump endorsed him for governor a few years back. Uh, I was going to ask you if you find this as depressing as I do, but I'm pretty sure you do.
No, I find it more depressing than you do. But it's simple. Trump's most loyal supporters are a reflection of Donald Trump. They're just like him in many ways. They don't care about his dishonesty. They don't care about the fact that he's been indicted twice and impeached twice, and likely will be indicted at least one or maybe more than one more time. They don't care, as I said, that he's chronically dishonest. They don't care that he's a narcissist, that he brags on. They don't care about any of that. Even if they don't like Donald Trump, they like him more than they like Joe Biden. And Joe Biden supporters like him, even if they don't like him, they like him more than they like Donald Trump. This isn't so much I'm voting for Joe Biden because I love Joe Biden, or I'm voting for Donald Trump because I love Donald Trump, except for Donald Trump's most loyal supporters. who do love him. It's, I don't like the other guy more. That's what it's a rejection of the other guy. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, who's enthusiastic about Joe Biden? But
Joe
Donald
Biden.
Trump more than anybody else. Think about this. Donald Trump more than anybody else energizes the Democratic base. Nobody energizes the Democratic base more than Donald Trump. So every day Donald Trump is in the news is a day we're not talking about Joe Biden's mental fitness, except maybe on Fox News.
Yeah, it's. Oh, you were going to say something more.
No, if I don't want to repeat myself, I'm just too down today to say the same thing too many times.
No, I hear you. It's. What one thing I thought was interesting too about what people are saying about Mike Pence and Ron DeSantis. If you look at when Trump was president, actually in elected office, Pence it would have been hard to find someone less loyal, I mean, someone more loyal than Pence to Donald Trump, and Ron DeSantis was a very big Trump backer too. But the loyalty thing, it just would it with Trump. I mean, Trump never has to be loyal to anybody, but everybody always has to be loyal to him, and that's not like a political thing to me. That almost feels like a blood pact is expected of anybody who's ever shown any deference to Trump. It's got to be this lifelong thing, otherwise they've stabbed him in the back somehow. And yeah, I don't know what to make of that, but it seems like that's where we're at.
We have several subscribers who, based on the quality of their writing, are bright people. I don't know them, but they're bright people. But they say things like, I don't care about any of the stuff you care about, John. I don't care about his personality. I don't care about his honest. I don't care about any of that. He's better than the other guy. And I'm thinking, what would Donald Trump have to do? And I don't want any boundaries around this question. Anything, what could he do that would make those people abandon him? Shooting somebody on Fifth Avenue is not one of the things. They wouldn't abandon him. What I can't, I don't know about you, but I can't think of anything that would make them abandon him.
No,
Biden supporters aren't nearly as loyal. But as I say, if it's a choice between Biden and Trump, there's no choice. They hate Donald Trump. They're voting against Donald Trump. Nobody voted in 2020, and it won't happen in 2024. Nobody will vote for Joe Biden because they think he's a visionary, he's a statesman, or he's even bright. Certainly not that he's mentally fit. That's not why they're voting for him. They're voting for him because he's running against somebody they don't like even more than they're concerned about him, which gets back to the title of your column.
yeah,
Derangement versus, what was it?
impairment, impairment versus derangement. Yeah,
Right. That's what it comes
yeah,
down to.
and I get a lot of people, responding to the columns. Well, I say a lot of people, but a good number that make the point. This really is just they want you to ignore Trump altogether, who he is, and go straight for the policies. That's what they like. What gets me, and I understand that argument prior to, I understood that argument in 2016, a general election argument. I understand it. I understood it in 2020 as a general election argument. I don't understand it right now in the primary because I'm just, if it's purely a policy thing that attracts people to Trump, in the Republican
It
Party,
isn't. It isn't.
no, it's not because what policies did they see that are so much better from Trump than all these other people that are running? And you ask people that, and they're like, well, he's more enthusiastic about it or something. It's that
They
takes
like
away the
Trump
whole
because
policy
he's a
argument.
fighter. They like Trump because he's aggressive, he's a fighter, he's rude, he's crude. That's what they like about him. Everything that a majority of Americans, especially independents, and you can't win without the support of independents, everything that independents and most Americans don't like about Donald Trump is precisely what his most loyal base does like about Donald Trump.
Right. Right. The good news is we still have some time. We'll see if anything changes. I'm hoping some of these candidates change up, the ones that are taking on Trump and the Republican Party. I hope they change up strategy. I mean, and ideally, I would love to see everybody go after him as the front runner that he is, the way Christie is, the way Asa Hutchinson is, Will Hurd, the two I just named probably have no chance at all. I don't think Christie really has much of a chance either, but I think he's doing a big service by at least taking it to Trump, because I think when you what we just talked about, where we were saying where policies aren't as important, in this primary, um, but Trump's presentation is he's the alpha dog, he's the guy who's large and in charge. I think really, if you take everything else off the table, which Republican voters kind of had, what you have left is you got to knock him down. You got to get up there and make him look smaller than he does now. And that's the only chance. I don't even think that might work, but it seems like the only chance to me.
It's the only chance because we don't have a Barry Goldwater today. If we had somebody who was widely respected in the Republican Party and another person in the Democratic Party, Barack Obama might fit that bill in the Democratic Party. And you need that person to go into the White House and say to Joe Biden, and you need a Republican to go to Mar-a-Lago and say to Donald Trump, you've done a great job in the past. You've served the country. We're grateful, but it's time to go. In both Donald Trump and Joe Biden's case, they wouldn't listen. They wouldn't listen. Nixon, for all Nixon's faults, he listened when Barry Goldwater and the leaders of Congress went in, and they didn't even tell him to resign. They did. That's a myth. All they said was, if you stay in office, you don't have the support of Republicans or Democrats anymore. You'll be impeached. And Nixon took it upon himself, again, with all his faults, to just leave. A, we don't have anybody with the gravitas in either party to do what Barry Goldwater did. And B, we don't have either candidate to do what Richard Nixon did.
No, true, true. I was gonna joke that maybe Kevin McCarthy could be that guy for the Republicans, Bernie.
Don't do that. Some people may think you're not joking. You don't want to,
I know, I
there's no
know.
credibility if you don't want to do that.
No, that's I won't get into that. We'll,
As
we'll
a
go
matter of
on
fact,
that.
Kevin McCarthy would be the opposite of
Yes.
Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater went into the White House and said, Mr. President of his own party, by the way, you don't have the support anymore. Kevin McCarthy does the opposite.
He does. He does.
Privately,
Every
he
now and
says
then.
privately he
Go ahead.
says one thing, and then when he realizes, ooh, I might offend Marjorie Taylor Greene or somebody else, he says, well, no, Donald Trump walks on water. Kevin
Yes.
McCarthy has sacrificed his dignity for Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, he's a cartoon character in many ways. It's every time you think he's gotten about as low or sacrificed enough of his manhood as he possibly can, he just goes ahead and does something even more embarrassing. And it's just, but he got the job. I guess that's all that matters to him. He is the speaker.
Such as it is.
Yes. Well, that's probably a good place to end things, Bernie. I did want to mention we're actually going to change our schedule up a little bit. Next week, we're going to have another No BS Zone. We're going to have a special guest. It's going to be Matt Lewis from the Daily Beast. He's going to be talking to us about how politicians of modest means become filthy rich once they get into office. So that should be interesting. He has a book he's going to be talking about too. Bernie, is there anything else you'd like to say this week?
No, I'm too depressed. Let's end this.
Okay. I'm sorry to depress you. Yes, I'll try to write a more uplifting column maybe this week and see how that
Well,
goes. But
right, here's an uplifting column. Joe Biden has decided not to run, and Donald Trump said, well, I'm not going to run either. That would be an uplifting column.
it would be a fictional
But it
column,
would
but
be fiction. It would be fiction, however.
that's right.
We don't deal in fiction.
That's right. I do write novels, so I could maybe try to put in some of that work into a column. But yeah, no, that would be nice. But we'll stay tuned and see what happens. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Let us know what you think about these episodes. Leave your feedback in the comment sections. And Bernie, you have a great day. All right.
You too, John.
Thank you.